We had some problems when we tried doing this session earlier today, so this is going to be a very quick re-record of the major concepts in this workshop session on a paperless classroom. One of the first things we should probably address is why you might want to rely on a paperless classroom. One reason is to be consistent with SUNY Oswego and SUNY's overall policies on both sustainability and printing. As you know, SUNY has encouraged the reduction in the number of printers and encouraged the reduction in the use of printers. Some of that may be concern about the large amount of paper that's being used and the amount of toner and the potential environmental costs of toner and printing and so forth. But there's also some other really good reasons for it besides adhering to these policy issues. One is that our students, once they leave Oswego, are not going to be working with pen and paper or blue books or pencils and paper for most of their interactions, most of their communications. They're going to be working generally in digital environments, as we all tend to do. And a nice thing about digital work is that it's all available in the cloud and you have a history of it. Students don't have to worry about losing their work or having their dog eat it because whenever they work on it in Brightspace or in Google Drive, the material is just stored there. They can work on it, they can stop and come back to it without ever worrying about losing it, leaving it behind, and so forth. And similarly, as the instructor, you don't have to worry about work being lost. You don't have to worry about carrying big piles of paper through the rain or the snow, or having your dog eat student work, or spilling coffee or something else on student work. So you have this digital storage of material, which just makes it really easy to access and also to maintain that type of access. And again, it's available from any web-enabled device. You can connect to the tools that we use most often on phones, on smartphones, on laptops, on desktop computers, on Chromebooks, and on tablet computers such as an iPad or any of the Android tablet computers. And a nice thing about materials that you as an instructor create is that if once you create this material, you can repurpose it. You can use parts of it in other classes. You can store it in other media. You can use some of it in presentations. And as long as you have it stored, it's going to be accessible and you can copy and paste out the things you need into other formats when it's relevant or when it's useful for that. And digital content can be much more easily edited and revised than things done with pencils or paper. And now we might be concerned about that if students were going to turn in work and you grade it and have them revise it, but our systems lock that down. So the work that they've submitted, once it's submitted, is locked in place. I had a situation a number of years ago, way back in the era of blue books, where a student had turned in a blue book and they didn't do so well on some of the questions. So they decided to write over my feedback and they changed their answers and said I had made a mistake. But I remembered grading it very precisely, and I also noted that the comments that I had made right on that particular page indicated that what was now there was not there at the time when they submitted it. And they argued with me about it, but I didn't give in. But the next test when I gave another test on a blue book, this was back in the late 1980s. The same thing happened, except that time I made a Xerox copy of the work they had submitted, and then when they turned in a new version of it, I did file an academic integrity violation report because they were clearly trying to get away with something and claim that they had submitted it correctly and I just didn't grade their work properly. And when the version they turned in was different than the Xerox copy I had provided when I graded that I made when I graded their work, it was pretty obvious what they were doing. Um, Another thing, though, in terms of accessibility, is that both federal and state laws require that the work that we do is accessible, or at least any work that we're going to share publicly. And um, photos or scans of handwriting are not digitally accessible without some conversion, and it's also much harder to read. So it's much better if we just work in the frame in the formats that are accessible, that are easy to use, that are convenient for students and for us, and that again provides somewhat more permanent storage than paper, which can be torn or damaged or get wet in the rain or snow, etc. So we're going to talk just about, we're just going to go over an introduction to some of the ways in which we can use digital documents and we can move to a paperless classroom. One is a lot of documents that we use with students, instead of generating a printout, could be shared using Google Drive. You just create the documents and you do it as a document template. Or if, for example, if you want to have students work on a particular assignment and you want to give them a template for responding, you could do some of that in Brightspace, but sometimes it's more convenient to create a Google Doc and essentially share that document with students so they're all turning everything in the same format. You could have them submit it through a Google form or save it as a PDF and upload it. For those who have taken the AQ course or heard about this in other areas, um, if you are teaching a lecture, an interactive lecture class, skeletal outlines can be really helpful, which is basically just an outline of the structure of that day's lecture or that day's presentation. And by sharing that skeletal outline, you're giving students just a little bit more structure, a little bit more ways of organizing the material where they can fill in the rest of it, but at least it shows the connections more explicitly, where some of the students we have who might be struggling with some concepts are able to make more sense of it because they have that basic structure of the skeletal outline. And a simple way of doing that, let me just hop out for a second. A really simple way of doing that is I'm going to just create a document in Google Drive in just a second. And I'll do it right in the folder that this was stored in. And well, actually, what I can do is I can just share this document itself. Those are the slides that I'm using, and there's only a couple of pages of them. But if I want to share this with students, if I wanted to share the slides, and we've been doing this with a lot of our workshops, is you can just choose the share option from that menu, and you can choose anyone with a link as a viewer. It doesn't really matter what way you start, but basically you have the options of viewer, commenter, or editor. And let me rephrase that. With the way I'm going to suggest that you do this, it doesn't matter what type of privilege you get because we're going to change them anyway. But let's leave it as a viewer, and we're going to choose copy the link. And let's say we want to share these slides with students so that they could take notes on them, for example. So I've just copied the link, and I'm going to go up to another tab here. I'm going to click done. I'm going to click done, and then I'm going to go up to another tab and paste that in. But because I don't want them to just be able to view it, I want them to have their own copy of this so they can work with it. I'm going to change everything beyond that last slash to where it says edit, etc. I'm just going to change that, or delete that, and change it to copy. And this is the URL that I share with students. And if they would remote, I put it in Zoom chat, as we've done with some of our workshops here. Or you could also just put it in Brightspace as a link. And then once you have this link, when students click on, there should be no space there. Once students click on the link, they'll get this sort of a message. And what it will do is it will make an exact copy of whatever you share with them that they then can edit themselves. So it'll be in their own Google Drive folder, and then they could use it as a starting point for an assignment or skeletal outlines for your classes or whatever other thing you want to share. You might share a spreadsheet or a starter spreadsheet, or you might share some data in a spreadsheet. But in any case, it's an easy and convenient way of sharing things where all the students get a copy of it just by clicking on it and choosing to make a copy. And if I make a copy, it's just going to put a copy in the same folder, as we'll see. As we will see, there we go. And so now when we look at the folder, if we refresh it, it is going to, oh, it put it in my root directory, sorry. So there is another one sitting in my drive here now, but we're not, and you can see it's right here. And you can move it wherever you want, or the students who receive it could move it to wherever they'd like. But we're not going to work with the copy. But that's a really simple way of sharing these things. Now, going back though to the start of the slide here, besides sharing documents and so forth, and instead of printing up things on paper where some of the students won't get it if they happen to be out the day, or they may lose it over the course of the day. Now they've got it where they can access it, put it in Google Drive, and they have their own versions of it. The other thing is that quite often we want students to work on teamwork collaboratively. And a really simple way of doing that is to share a folder on Google Drive, or have students do collaborative work where there's a shared, well, for example, in my capstone course, I have students for the last several years working um, on open pedagogy projects where they work in groups on writing a book or creating podcasts and so forth. I create a shared folder for the entire class. I share that, and the sharing for that is going to the folder and just copying and pasting their email addresses in, which you can get from your roster or from the registrar, well, from the from some of the pages provided by the registrar, or you could just download a export a grade book from Brightspace, and one of the columns in there will be the email addresses of our students. Just copy that column, paste it into the share option, and all the students will now have edit access if you give them edit access to that folder, which is the best way of letting them work. And then you can create subfolders for any groups within that. Students can do the same. And it's a really great way of fostering collaborative work. And when students are working together, they could do it synchronously where they're all logged into the document at the same time. Or they could do it asynchronously where they just go in and they do their own edits when they're able to do that. And then they can come back and work on it together whenever they choose to. And that's a really good way of facilitating a lot of group writing projects or other shared activities within a collaborative group. Another thing you can do is use mathtype in Google Drive. And I'm going to demonstrate that in just a second. I'm going to open up a file. First, I have to get Google Drive back open again. So I had accidentally closed it. So I'm going to come over here, and I am going to bring in a document that I'll just create. I'm just going to create a new Google Doc, and I'm going to drag it over. And now it's on this screen. And let me make this a little bit bigger to give us some room. Because one of the problems we had today was it wasn't very easy to see the math tools. And I'm just going to call this thing junk, because that way it's a reminder to myself to get rid of this later, because it's not going to contain anything I want beyond here. But we do have access in Google Docs, everyone on campus does, to mathtype as a tool, as an add-on to Google Docs. And what you would do is you would click on add-ons and extensions, choose Get Add-ons. I've already installed it on my computer, but you would just type mathtype, and then it will show up. And then you would just choose to install it. Click on it, and it would ask you if you want to install it. Say yes, and then it will now be part of your Google Drive. I've already done that. I've had that active for a while now. So if you want to use that, what you have to do, though, on a given document is you would go to extensions and then mathtype, and you would choose open mathtype. And now it's going to open this mathtype window in this little sidebar program. I think we can pretty safely get rid of that. But what happens now is if we go over to here on insert, under the insert menu, you now have the equation editor available in mathtype. And basically what that does is it gives you a little box, which is a start of your equation, and you can type in it. So for example, if I wanted to write y, and let's say I want to put in a subscript, I will go over here and I'll see that there are some drop downs that have a subscript option. So I would go here and I would see this is the format, or the container for a subscript. And it just put a little subscript box to the right of this, and I will have yi, and then I will put equals. And let's say I want to say beta 0 plus beta 1. So what I would do is I would go over here. I see the Greek characters. I see a beta 0, and then I can put in again that subscript, the subscript container. And let's say beta 0. Oops. I have to go into the little box for that. The format doesn't look great at this stage. And then let's say plus, and now I'm going to do it a little bit simple so I don't have to go through as many menus. I'm just going to copy and paste this. but I'm going to change that 0 to a 1, and then I'm going to put in an x1, and again, I'm going to go to the math container here, or the subscript option here, and let's say put in x1i, let's say. Yeah, except that did not go into the subscript. Here we go. So it's going to be x1i. And then I will put in, let's say I'm going to repeat this and then just do this for beta 2, x2i. So I'm going to stay in that box so I can stay in the equation, and I'm going to put plus and then copy that in. And then I'm just going to change the subscripts here. It is a little bit more than, it takes a little bit more time than writing it by hand. But once you get all these things, and you can do this in Google Slides, you can do it in any of the Google Suite with the this editor. And then I'm going to put in a plus sign, and then I'm going to look for the ellipses option, which I am not seeing. I may have missed it somewhere. Maybe not to drop down. Okay, well, that does not appear to be in here, and that surprises me because it is in most of these tools. So what I'm just going to do is, while I'm in there, I am going to just do it the old-fashioned way and put in 3 dots, and then put in this, and I'm going to say plus beta k xk, let's say. And here now I have the essence of a simple multiple regression equation, for example, except I'm going to put this in as k, where k is the number of variables in the equation. And, because we don't have very precise measurements of most of these things, or we can't predict things very carefully, very precisely, we're going to throw in that error term, which is so much a part of econometric analysis. So we will just go back here and again put in a subscript, and right there. And so we have except again, I'm not used to that extra space in there. And now we have this. And now we have a regression equation. The spacing is kind of ugly, but it's there, and it's now available. And it is, I believe, also accessible with document readers. Now, so this is one way of doing math equations. It's probably the hardest way of doing it. Another way of doing it is in Brightspace, which is how we share so much of our work with students. And I'm going to just open up a page in a course that I'm working on this summer. And let me get that open here. And let's go over to here. And I'm just going to, I think I had started this earlier today. I guess I didn't save it. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create a brand new page, a new HTML file. So here it is. And here you have another equation editor, which is was quite a bit more full featured. And so I'm going to click on that, and you have a choice here. If you're comfortable with MathML, which is an HTML extension for math, which I don't work with quite as much. I work mostly with either equation editors or with LaTeX, because I did write a book using LaTeX a while back. So I'm reasonably comfortable with that, although I do need to brush up if I haven't used it for a while. But let's go with the graphical equation editor. And here it is. And it looks sort of like what we had, but there's a bit more in terms of tools here. And so this is one menu here. Here's another one, and another, and another, another, and so forth. And you can see we've got a fairly wide range of math symbols and so forth. So if you wanted to work with an integral, say from, let's say negative infinity to positive infinity, we would go to the symbols here, and we see the infinity symbol is right here. Oops, right there. And we will insert that one more time. Negative, let's try that again. Let me put in infinity here, and then I'm not sure why it's not showing up. There we go. And let me put in the negative sign before it to a positive infinity. I must have just been slipping up in terms of what I had selected there. The positive infinity of, let's say 1 over, well, let me do the actual equation thing here to get the ratio, and here we go. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to put 1 over, let's say we want to put a square root in here. So the square root is right here. And let's say 2 pi, where pi is under these symbols, and pi. And this is sigma. Some of you may recognize where this is going. And the sigma is right here. And then but we're going to put in e to the to raise it to a power, which should be right over here. So this would be the power option or the exponent. So this would be e to the minus, and then in here we're going to put a ratio. Yeah, we're going to put in a ratio, and let's put in x minus, and then throw in a mu sub x. Mu, under the symbols here. So, and over over sigma. Sigma is, I'm sorry, I'm just a little slow today. It's been a long day. But we want actually this whole quantity here. And let's just put braces around this. And here we go. And we should be able to just choose that. There we go. And let's raise this whole thing to an exponent. Now, again, this took a few seconds more than trying to write this by hand, but it also is something that's going to look a whole lot nicer on a document, and it's going to be digitally accessible, I believe, but it's certainly going to be a whole lot easier to read. And we're going to just square this. And anyway, if you know the answer to this whole thing turns out to be, if I did this correctly, and I'm not sure I did because I am getting a little bit tired here. Let's see, and let's say equals 1, because if this equation is correct, it's just the area under a standard normal distribution for a given sigma and mu. Okay, so, and oh, well, and that is dx, sorry, I left out the dx, which is kind of important. Okay, so in any case, you've got a whole host of symbols in here. You got partial derivative symbols. You've got all those little ellipses, in different formats. You also have the ability to create a matrix, and there you just choose the dimensions of the matrix. But you may want to put that, well, we don't want it in that equation, but we could put it as another row down here. And let's say we want to look at the determinant of a 3 by 3 matrix. There we go. And we could just put in some numbers there. And oops, we don't want letters. And I'm not sure if this is singular. I'm just randomly throwing numbers in. And 12, there we go. And so you could ask students to evaluate this determinant, for example, or you could ask them to do some type of expansion. So it's not really very difficult to do this using the Brightspace tools. Now, if you are, on the other hand, comfortable with mathtype, you can do things a little bit even more efficiently. So let me get past this and we'll start a new line. If you know LaTeX a little bit, for example, suppose you want to write an equation. Let's say that simple multiple regression equation that we had before, where I might say, for example, y sub I is equal to, and then I'm going to write in beta sub 0 plus slash beta, and then the underscore for, oops, try that again. The underscore, I messed up. Let me continue. And it should work. There we go. And then I'm going to put in an underscore times 1, and then put in x sub 1i. And then now you notice it's actually giving us this whole formula, except here I want both the 1 and the I together. So I'm going to put in the I there. Sorry, 1i, Cyclops, I guess. Here we go, with an extra one. Um, plus, and then now I could copy and paste some of that. In fact, let me just do that because that'll make it a little bit more efficient. So here, and then plus, I'm just going to change the ones to two so we get the second term in the summation. And then I'm going to put in, actually, I don't remember the ellipses that go in the center. So I'm going to just cheat and just put in 3 dots there. Or, if you were doing the graphic one, you could pick whichever one is centered horizontally. I just don't remember that offhand. I haven't done this in probably a year or so. And then we'll do the same thing for the last term of the summation. And we've got this with, let's say this is beta k, x sub ki. And now you notice I've got most of the equation there. All I need is the error term. And that was probably a little bit quicker. And then when I'm done, I just click on the insert command and there's that equation. And when it's in that format, it just automatically centers, which is what you'd often want to do anyway. So it's really easy to add LaTeX to documents, to anything in Brightspace. And this is just an HTML document or a page like anything else. So you could edit it, you could put words around it, and you could do anything else that you would like to. And you could even put text within the formulas if you know the LaTeX code, or if you just want to well, just enter it. So this is how you might use you might use the math equation editor within Brightspace, and it's really powerful. And another thing is, it's really easy for students to learn how to use it with a graphical interface. And if you give them assignments in here, they can actually learn how to use a graphical interface to generate equations if that's the barrier. Because one of the main things I often hear when people say that they have to do things on paper is because it's too hard to type things, mathematical equations, on in digital documents. And that was true probably 30 years ago, but it's a whole lot less true today. So there's a really simple thing. I'm just going to cancel this because I don't really need this in my labor class. So I'm just going to hop out. But that would be just how you would add an equation, and you could do it anywhere in your text. And by the way, this was a picture I took a year or so ago over at Glimmerglass Pond or Lagoon. And this was a chapter on labor mobility. So that's why it's in there, because certainly these geese were being mobile. Okay. And so it's certainly an image that students recognize. Now, one other tool I said we'd talk about a little bit is Word. And I have a blank document opened here. And I'm going to drag it over to the screen. And apparently it's telling me I've got too many things. It seems to be resistant. So I'm going to close this, and I'm going to close this, and I'm going to now try bringing it over. And apparently this is also being a barrier. So let me just close that, and now try dragging this over into the screen. And here we go. Okay. Now, this is on a Mac right now. The Windows version is a little bit different, but it's very similar. Basically, you go to Insert, you go to Equations, and you get this whole equation editor. And there you go. And here we have a series of menus here. You could use LaTeX as well. If you're comfortable with LaTeX and you have the more recent version of Word, you could insert directly text, or you could convert mathematical regions to one of these particular formats or one of these styles. But basically here, you've got all these basic tools. So here you've got the operators. You could also do ratios and fractions. And you notice you've got derivatives and differentials and partial derivatives, and also partial total derivatives, which we don't use quite as much, but we do use them occasionally in economics. You've got, you've got these little script things here. And you've got, at least X squared shows up a lot. You've got radicals where you can have the nth root and so forth. You've got a quadratic formula and the area of this, or the square root of a squared plus b squared. And you notice, by the way, it has the hover text or the alt text built in when you insert this. Word is fairly good about providing alt text automatically. So again, it's digitally accessible. Here you have integrals with limits, whether in front or on the extremes. You've got double integrals, you've got triple integrals, and so forth. You also have the contour integrals, which, is perhaps a little bit less common in most applications, although your mileage may vary by discipline. Here's a usual summation and product terms, where you have the text box and you have the upper and lower limits, just a generic one. You could put the upper and lower limits above and below, or if you need to do something inline and you don't have as much space, you might put it right at the edges of the sigma here. Um, Here, and again, there's a text box where you put in whatever the formula is using exactly the same type of tools. And the same is true here if you're looking at the union of sets or intersections of sets, and etc. Um, so here we have the union of the intersection between x and xn and yn, for example. So you've got a lot of nice tools there. You've got the whole choices of brackets here. You've got trig functions here, and you've got an inverse trig functions. You've got accents or overstrike and understrike options where you could put a dot above, two dots above, three dots above. You could put a little hat or a caret on top of something, an inverted caret or a check, an acute or accent grave or accent acute, accent, whatever that is, brev. It's been a while since I took any of the Romance languages. You can put a tilde on top of something or just a vertical bar, a double over bar, an over brace. And you can do that over an equation as well. You can flesh it out and fill it out. You can do it below to do an under brace to emphasize certain things. And you've got these really, really nice tools, and you could put formulas in a box, and you could do, well, et cetera. And here you've got the tensor products, et cetera. Okay, so you've got the usual types of limits here, or logs and limits, and minimum and maximum functions, the natural log. You've got these other operators, and you've got more matrix options here, where you've got an identity matrix of different sizes. You've got, or et cetera. And you just fill in the numbers and it's all there. And here you've got, the brackets around them, or if you prefer the parentheses, you can use that, and do whatever you'd like with these. And again, here, it looks like this only goes up to 3x3 matrices, but you also have vectors as well. Okay, so in any case, you've got all these tools available in Word, and they're also available, I'm reasonably sure, in PowerPoint. I probably should check that just to be sure. So if you just take a second for me to open up PowerPoint, and I'm going to go to Microsoft PowerPoint, and let's just see what happens here. I'm just going to do a blank presentation, and I am going to go to insert. This is probably not what you would put on a header slide, but there we go, the equation tool. So we could put our equations right here. We probably wouldn't want to do this as a title, but it's basically the same equation editor we have elsewhere. Now, on a Windows machine, I purchased my own license for mathtype, which it can be used either within the Office suite or as a standalone package. And it just has a few more options, and it's a little more efficient. And it will also read and write LaTeX and do other things with it if you'd like to. But, I think the last time, well, I get an upgrade with it every year, or periodically when new releases come out. But I think the first time I bought it was like $30 or $25. It's gone up a bit since then. But the equation editor that comes within the Office suite is fairly powerful, and you can do a lot with it. You probably can do everything you need to do within your classes, and it just looks so much better to have these equations than it does to be drawing things by hand. And it's digitally accessible, so you meet accessibility requirements, and that's pretty much all I wanted to say. It's just, one other thing I should note is that if you're doing some of these things within Brightspace and you want students to work on groups, you can very easily assign groups and then create an assignment, which uses basically something like an HTML editor. And you can use all the mathematical tools there, and your students can do it as well. You share it. They turn it in, and you can assign a group grade that will go to the entire group. Or you could find some way of measuring their individual work as well, or you can do a mix of those things. But the group tool allows you to very easily share assignments, including math typing, with students, and then students can um, respond and put in their own math typing and submit it back to you as a group for their entire group. And then you assign the grade and it automatically goes to all members of the group. If there are people who are not part of it, you can also include one of the questions to ask to list all the people in the group who were present. And then you could, if you wanted to, you could just assign a 0 for those students who were not there on that particular day. It depends on how flexible you want to be and so on. So that's all I've really got. And if you have any questions on any of these things, please let me know, and I'm happy to try to help out. So we'll get this posted, and this went a little bit better than when we tried it this afternoon, partly because we were using a really old computer. Okay.